Good day, everyone.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to be here. So, but you can start your presentation now.
Excellent. Thank you very, very much. So, first of all, thank you all very much for the opportunity today. This opportunity has been made possible for us with our trusted partner ISIT in France. We will cover more about that in a moment. Today's presentation covers more of a high-level aspect of the DevSecOps space, as well as what we do here at Whitesource, which is focusing on SCA, software composition analysis, and also SAST. We do have a Q&A, a questions and answers session at the end of my presentation. Joining me, I have Luke Brogan. Now, he's not available on the live video call. However, we might be able to take some questions and answers in the chat. So, if we're able to ask any questions, please feel free to do so. So before I begin the presentation, first of all, I must congratulate you on a victory of the Rugby Six Nations. I am Irish, and therefore I am very disappointed not to win the championship, but congratulations to France. I'm the director here for channels at Whitesource for EMEA and the APAC space. I've been with the organization just over 1 year. And my journey here has been very aggressive within the channel world and how we're opening up as an organization to become more channel friendly and working very, very closely with our trusted partners in region. And of course, again, as mentioned, ISIT before in France is our trusted partner. So again, thank you to all for allowing us to speak today. The topic of the presentation today is closing the loop from detection to remediation. However, the focus of my presentation is going to be more on the remediation side, more so than the detection side. Why, you might ask? Well, we believe at Whitesource that detecting, of course, is what we do. However, that being said, the remediation, how you solve the problem and the speed to remediation is the most important aspect. So today I'm going to be speaking a little bit about how it is that we do this. So if we may go to the next slide, please. So from the DevSecOps space and integration of DevSecOps and security culture, the integration of security aspects and practices with the DevOps process, using agile methodologies to deliver small yet secure pieces of frequent releases, specifically with regards to coding, the automation of security processes wherever possible, and the best response to the bottleneck, and we will speak specifically about this topic in a little while, the bottleneck effect of older security models versus modern continuous delivery pipeline. If I touch on a couple of these aspects, there's a few words that are highlighted in bold that I want to focus on. The security aspects, the DevOps space, the agility, and the automation process. Again, the classical models would lead you to discover opportunities or discover weaknesses, vulnerabilities, and security risks, and then lead you into a more standardized process for how you solve these problems. And in fact, we will cover this in the next slide. But the automation part is what's really, really important here. How we take the automation process and bring it to the forefront. We're really going to be speaking about this today. So you will know this process, and I'm sure some of you will probably get a little bit upset when you see the process, right? So security teams analyze and prioritize vulnerabilities when they come in and when you see them. You typically send emails or log a ticket to begin the resolution of the issue. And you close the loop by closing your ticket once you have a resolution. What if you were to take a different approach? What if you were to begin in reverse almost? What if you were to begin with the remediation as soon as you discover a vulnerability? And that is what we do here at Whitesource. With our SCA capabilities within the static code analysis world, this is what we're able to go and do. We highlight the vulnerability as you see it. enabling you to become the security officer in a sense and be able to not only change what you're doing immediately, but to not allow you to veer off track with regards to your project. Next slide, please. I want to speak a little bit about this particular philosophy around changing the mindset. And shifting left is not necessarily something that is new, that we utilize in terms of terminology. It's becoming more common practice in the industry now. And shifting left is, if you take a very high level description of what it is that I mean by shifting left, it is essentially if you have the beginning of a process and the end of a process, we want you to take the technology and move it to the beginning of the process, thereby shifting the mindset as to how it is that you develop your product or your brand for that matter. So shift left and close the loop. And what do we mean? Build guardrails to keep you on track. Don't be a gatekeeper in terms of the vulnerability issues that you might encounter. I'll go through these points in more detail. Avoid bottlenecks in use process. If the process slows you down, you need to be adjusting it. You need to be changing your process. Typically, when we work with customers on projects and through our partners, they deal with very, very strict timelines in terms of releases. They do not have time to veer off. And if they discover a problem halfway through or towards the end of a project, it may be too late. And you may have to start all over. Make security everyone's responsibility. I'm going to talk about this in a moment. Facilitate regular discussions about application security throughout the entire development process. So if we talk a little bit about the security aspect and making it everyone's responsibility, my background in the industry is very, very much from a cybersecurity perspective. And SCA is really touching on that space now as well. What if you were to, instead of looking at the classical logging of tickets and resolution slide that we looked at just before, what if you were able to go and have, as an individual software developer, the ability to go and not only see when a vulnerability is highlighted, but go and see what the potential resolution is and go and fix it immediately, thereby making everyone almost a security officer. The guardrails aspect in the very first point is really important. You do not have the time to diversify or go off track. You need to stay on the road. And by building guardrails, and essentially by taking the technology and utilizing it in such a manner that when something comes up, you can fix it and deal with it instantly, means that you can stay on track. And then lastly, the point around facilitating regular discussions is really about reporting features and functionality. So taking that, the reporting aspect that we have and the reporting facilities that we provide, you're able to take this into your regular meetings on updates or releases to ensure that you're staying on target. Next slide, please. I want to really speak about the business and the operational benefits, and I've added this slide in, and I've actually combined two slides into one here. In my history of working within the cybersecurity industry, I've worked with companies that have promised return of investment. And return of investment is I think, a sensitive subject in the cybersecurity world, for the simple reason that a lot of the technology that you need to go and acquire is because you have to acquire, not because you necessarily want to acquire or because you wanted to focus in on improving your either process flow, technology, or remaining safe. Within the technology that we provide, there is genuine ROI. And I want to give one particular example, but first let me go through these points. So if we start with the business benefits, cost reduction, speed of delivery, security by design, and your design, most importantly, open discussion, again, talking back to the element of building your processes and taking the technology to allow you to integrate it into what it is that you do on a daily basis makes this incredibly cost effective. If we touch on the operational side, and this is where I want to highlight a particular example of an organization that we work with. Versions are up to date, nearly zero rework. Again, speaking to the point earlier on of staying on track and building guardrails to ensure that you remain on the road, there is no allowance here for you to diversify and go off track. We highlight when issues are prevalent and when issues become available, and we fix them. Early identification of vulnerabilities in code enables a culture of constant improvements. The example that I want to highlight here is an organization that we work with at a global scale. They are a partner of ours, and they sell technology to customers as well as consult and consultantly advise technology that the organizations need to have in place. They have a subset of highly skilled engineers that work on these customers. And an example that's a little bit different to the norm that I want to give, and also touching on the return of investment subject. This is an organization that acquire and buy our product, not to sell it to customers, but actually, in fact, they also sell it to customers, but they use it internally for their critical assets, for their developers, and for their security teams and technical teams to speed the process. And I want to let that sink in a little bit. They don't necessarily resell the technology, they use it internally. And why is this? Well, for a couple of reasons. One, they have a very difficult scenario of hiring the right people in the industry. As we all know, the industry has a massive shortfall of people readily available to go and join organizations. So when they find the right people and they invest money and time in educating these people to their processes, they want to retain these people. And this particular organization was having great difficulties in retaining people because they were not doing what they were signed on to do. They were not doing what they were hired to do. They were doing mundane admin tasks, but they were the only people that were certified to do this work. We have speeded up and we've sped up their processes and allowing the people to go and do the work that they're meant to go and do, thereby making their offering more attractive and more successful to the customers. And they are actively retaining staff. Next slide, please. So a couple of points on this particular slide. So we've spoken about the prioritization of remediation. I want to speak about the next level. I also want to talk a little bit about what our goal is and how we achieve our goal. So if we start first on the prioritization and remediation element. So actionable information is critical. Minimum actions versus maximum impact. And we utilize smart remediation for this. But one example I will give to you that we've spoken a little bit about today is by having the ability to act on issues instantly, not just see that the issues are there, and then having to go through a chain of command to understand what the resolution is. If you do not do this, you can almost switch this sentence around. Maximum actions, minimum impact. If we also then layer the shift left methodology and mentality onto this, it really X5 or X10 exacerbates this particular point. You make that point more aggressive, in other words. If you act late and also act at the very end of a project in terms of when you start utilizing the technology, you could be in a situation of maximum actions and minimum output. Whereas utilizing the technology, we are able to allow you to do the opposite. So our goal is to prioritize the vulnerabilities based on severity, availability of fix, and the business impact. And we do this in a very, very specific way. not necessarily a new way to the industry in terms of how we highlight it, but in a very simplistic manner. We utilize Whitesource priority scan. We start with high security vulnerabilities. We identify direct vulnerable dependencies. After fixing dependencies, we run the automated tests again, and then we scan again to ensure that everything is correct and up to speed. And we do this in a very, very short amount of time, thereby allowing you to essentially see the vulnerability is there, how we fix it, and then when it has been fixed and now is effectively again with the green light. We're going to speak a little bit more about this in a couple of slides. So if we go to the next slide, please. This one is a particularly quick one. So if we look at the vulnerabilities prioritization, and if I take one here, and I'm just looking at my screen here. So if we take this slide as an example, it is a very simplistic element. It is the effective versus the ineffective vulnerabilities in a component. If you take the ability and you take the technology and you make yourself more effective by discovering where the vulnerabilities are faster, it simply improves your process and thereby also improves your product. Let's move to the next slide, please. So what if there is no fix? We employ on our user interface and with our dashboards, we employ some very simple identifiable shields. And this is quite simplistic, right? Red means severe and means you need to address it immediately, from amber to gray and of course to green. We will identify, and there is an example in the slide coming up very soon, we will identify when something, where the issue is exactly. We will identify with a hyperlink exactly to the location. We will identify what the issue is. We will then identify whether we have fixed it immediately or whether you need to address it immediately. And then also categorize from low to medium to high what the risk and impact is to your business. So if we take a look at the next slide, please. Here's an example that we can utilize for this. So we have best-in-class breachability analysis technology. We have the largest coverage also with Java, Scala, Kotlin, the various C languages, JavaScript and Python. And what we try to achieve is to eliminate the noise. You do not have to go into a specific application or user interface or the UI essentially to see where these issues are. Our technology essentially lives in the browser. It will highlight the problem to you. You don't need to set a reminder to go in and check the dashboard. We will bring the attention to you as and when it happens. We will tell you whether it has been fixed or whether you need to address it. And here is an example. It will show you exactly within the library, which library it is, which specific file we're talking about, the type of security vulnerability, and the description. Again, you will see the shields. We've got a high flagged vulnerability with a green shield, meaning that it has been resolved. We also have a medium impact to the business, which has not been resolved, and you need to go and address it. And by clicking the link, you will then be taken exactly to where you need to address it, and then also can raise tickets to us if needs be. If we go to the next slide, please. So in closing, as we go towards the last couple of slides, one of the things I wanted to demonstrate to you or to highlight in this presentation is around the focus on remediation, the business priority, the effectiveness. If we go one slide back, please. There we go. Thank you. So the business priority, the effectiveness, the exploitability, severity, and availability of fixes. This is really important to us. When we go and demonstrate, unlike today's presentation, which is mostly all, well, in fact, all PowerPoint, When we go and demonstrate to directly to customers with our partners, we lead with our technology. We do not present with slides. We present with our technology. We utilize our dashboard and our technology to both present our technology, but also to answer any and all questions. We work with customers through our partners to also deliver proof of concepts. We firmly believe in proof of concepting when it comes to technology like this. You need to see this working to really truly understand how powerful it can be. And we join this process with you. So from start to finish, we work with you as an organization. We identify where you should take examples of coding or projects to focus in on from a test perspective. We then set with preliminary calls the expectation of what you need to deliver to make this the most beneficial and effective test process. And then we have launch calls where we go through and begin the process with you. We have check-in conversations and we have finalization conversations plus a report at the end that we demonstrate to you. All this takes place in about 2 weeks' time. Very, very powerful tool. And we really do encourage you, and I personally will encourage you to reach out to us afterwards and also to our organization that we work very closely with, ISIT in France, to arrange personal sessions where we can take you through this technology at depth, not just show you PowerPoint slides. Last slide, please. So, in closing, the vulnerabilities remediation. One of the most reliable risk mitigation strategies is to keep your open source components continuously patched. This is a very simplistic statement. By doing this, you avoid being exposed to known vulnerabilities. And finally, the automated remediation workflows can be initiated based on security vulnerability policies triggered by a vulnerability detection, vulnerability severity, or CVSS scores, or when a new version is released. All this combined leads you to become security aware, gives you a firmer posture when it comes to understanding where you work and where you are within your project and keeping you on track. Again, building those guardrails. Okay, next slide, please. So with that, and taking into the time that we have available to us today, we are at the Q&A phase. Now, we don't have Luke available on live camera, but we do have him available on the chat. So if we're able to see the chat and perhaps ask questions, Luke can potentially also answer in the chat if this is available. But from my side, thank you very, very much for allowing us to present. We consider the French territory and the French markets an incredibly important industry and region, based specifically on the variety, but also the breadth of organizations that you have within your country. It's a really important market for us, and we are very thankful for being a part of it.
Thank you, Peter. Est-ce qu'il y a des questions par rapport à la présentation de Peter? So maybe do you have a specific methodology between open source blocks and proprietary blocks in your approach?
Yeah, so let's diversify. Are you able to see the questions and answer the chat function? I want to try and bring Luke into this.
You hear me? Okay.
Yes. Hold on. Okay, so I want to try and draft Luke into the answering of these questions so we make it as interactive as possible. Okay. Are you able to repeat the question again, please?
Sorry, so my question is, do you have in your technology, in your approach, different methodology between the the analysis of open source software and proprietary software in a same software, same project.
Yeah, so if we talk about the open source space, about 80% of an app, if you will, is open source. And we can secure that obviously through the software composition analysis component. We secure the rest with our SAST offering. And when we combine this, it's our SCA and our SAST being very much better together. This is how we typically go and solve this particular predicament. We also focus in on SDLCs, CI/CDs, and repos. But essentially, the technology allows you to go and secure a better posture, right?
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you, Peter. Thank you for this presentation. Thank you. Sorry, yes.
Thank you very much. What I wanted to close with briefly is we do also integrate with many tools, and what I would like to offer up again as a suggestion is reach out to us, allow us to have this particular individual session with you guys. But we integrate with many tools like GitLab, Jenkins, etc. But we focus predominantly on the shift left methodology, getting you in early. So IDE security, essentially. But please reach out, and we will happily engage with you guys directly with our partner ISIT, and look forward to hearing from you. And thank you very much for your time.